Good day everyone, I am Roger Chabot. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, the liberation of the Netherlands, and victory in Europe against Hitler and the Nazis. Millions lost their lives in this terrible conflict, and we must remember it to prevent such tragedy to happen again. In this short documentary series, we will explore the bravery, the sacrifices, and the resilience of the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion during Operation Varsity, as well as the 1st Canadian Corps, who joined the rest of the 1st Canadian Army in Northwest Europe after fighting for 21 months in Italy. Let's undertake this journey together to ensure that their sacrifices are not forgotten. Operation Plunder began on March 23, 1945, as a key attack to cross the Rhine River into Germany. Led by Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, it involved the 21st Army Group, which included the 1st Canadian Army, the 2nd and 3rd British Armies, and the U.S. 9th Army. In the first phase, the 1st Canadian Army and 3rd British Army stayed south of the Rhine to protect the left flank of the invasion, while the 2nd British Army crossed to capture Ijssel. The U.S. 9th Army secured the right flank of the invasion. The objective of the second phase was to extend the advance north of Ijssel to facilitate the crossing of additional troops to Emmerich. On March 24th, Operation Varsity aimed to capture high ground and prevent German counterattacks, involving over 16,000 paratroopers and close to 4,000 aircrafts, making it the largest airborne operation ever on a single day and in one location. The 18th Airborne Corps, composed of the 6 British and 17 U.S. airborne divisions, planned a combined parachute and glider assault north of Ijssel, east of the Rhine. The 6th Airborne landed north of the Der Forster Wald, while the 5th Parachute Brigade landed northwest of Hamilton. The 3rd Brigade, with the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion, landed in a field near the road connecting Ijssel and Emmerich. They confronted the German 1st Parachute Army and the 47th Panzer Corps, including troops specially trained in anti-airborne operations, necessitating meticulous planning. right.
But Varsity was the biggest airborne operation in the Second World War.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
That is
mention.
what people always tend to forget.
Exactly.
Because they always think Market Garden and the landings at the Pegasus Bridge and in Normandy were big. But this was the biggest airborne landing in the Second World War, on one day.
On one day?
On one day.
On one day, and also the fact that they dropped right on top of the enemy.
Yeah.
So to avoid being dispersed. And it was a daytime drop.
It was a daytime drop, yeah. Company C was going that way. Company B had objectives on the farms over there. And Company A should have been in this area, I guess, because they needed to go to the intersection there.
That's it.
As usual, I was last out of looking to be first down. Only this time I looked up and saw holes popping in my canopy, what I told you.
Again, yeah.
I will be down sooner than expected. A couple of jumpers looked like they were faking death to avoid being shot at, so they basically did, yeah.
They were dead.
Yeah, they were, yeah. I released the bag and let it out on its line. This slowed my oscillation just as it hit the dirt. And my landing was a good one, despite the speed of descent. I had to get below enemy fire. Soon I was rid of my parachute and reeling in my bag of tricks. A little ways off, one of our decoders was heading earthward with a heavily smoking right motor. I hoped it wasn't ours. I liked our crew and they had set us right on target. There was noise and death all around. I spotted the company colored smoke and soon joined the others in the broken dash to the edge of the woods, where we're standing right now. There we ran into a German slit trench. Fortunately, they had already skedaddled, so they already took the road. There were paratroopers here, but of course there were also the last German units,
right,
which had to hold the lines here, but already saw that the war was lost. So some gave up very, very fast. So yeah.
Charco just identified this and brought us here. What looks like probably was a trench, a German trench. You can see, like, we can notice that it's a bit higher here in the front. And this hole probably was a lot deeper back then. So it would be a perfect position because it covers the field right in front of me. It would be perfect to engage the paratroopers coming down. You know, I think, like Brigadier Hill says, if you're scared, you think about the poor guys below, because when they see like 2,000 bloodthirsty paratroopers coming down the sky, bristling with weapons. So even if they're shooting at you, like, they're probably like scared for their life. Imagine you land in those trees, that tall trees. So the canopy, your parachute basically, would be hanging on the top branches, and but it's so high that your feet can't touch the ground. So the commanding officer, Jeff Nicklins, was killed because he got hung up in the top of those trees, and below him was a machine gun nest, German machine gun nest. So when they found him 36 hours later, he was riddled with bullet holes. He didn't even have a chance to get out of his harness. Amazing to be here. Like we talked about Operation Varsity, I think my whole career. I did a painting of Operation Varsity like many, many years ago. That was actually, that painting, the prints were signed by 3 veterans of 1 Can Para. And here I am today in that very, very spot, that very field that I had never seen when I did the painting. What, man, like, can't describe what I'm feeling right now. It's a great, amazing.
Well, let's go to the farms. Battle damage. Battle damage. Here. Hard Bravery.
In the 6th British Airborne Division, there was only one Victoria Cross that was earned. And the Victoria Cross was earned by an orderly, a medical orderly of the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion, Corporal Fred Topham. And it happened in this area, in the field here during Operation Varsity on the 24th of March 1945. During the drop here, there were many casualties, many wounded soldiers on the DZ. And a lot of orderlies were tending to the soldiers and dragging them to safety to be able to treat them. And at one time, as Topham and other orderlies were taking care of some wounded soldiers, they heard the scream of a paratroopers, a German machine gun raking the area. And the 2 orderlies who were with him started running toward that wounded paratrooper and were cut down by enemy fire. With no hesitation, when he saw his 2 friends, his 2 brothers in arms go down, Topham took upon himself to rush and run across the field to go get that wounded soldier. And of course, the bullets were still flying. And as he's getting close to the wounded soldier, a bullet went through his nose. It must have been in horrible pain. And but it didn't stop him, and he went to the paratrooper, took care of his wounds, and dragged him or carried him to safety the best he could back to the tree line to take care of him and get him evacuated. And he did that during the whole time of the drop, in great pain, because he didn't want to, even though he was injured himself and wounded, he said he kept doing what he was doing. Finally, when it slowed down and they were able to go to the medical aid post, the MO took care of him and patched his nose and wanted to send him back to the field hospital. And Topham said, no, I'm not going back to the field hospital. I still have some jobs to do. He wanted to go back to his company because every medic were responsible for his whole company. So, and on his way back to his company, with his nose patched, probably on this very small road similar to where we are right now, there was a universal carrier that was coming in, that was carrying mortar rounds, probably from the mortar platoon. But the mortar bomb fell in the carrier, and there was artillery and machine gun fire again, raking that vehicle. And despite the fact that there were people saying that to stay away from the burning vehicle, Topham knew there were the 3 occupants were wounded and couldn't extract themselves. So he went to the vehicle and extracted the 3 wounded soldiers while the mortar rounds started to explode inside the vehicles, and there were still bullets flying around. And he dragged them to safety. One of them unfortunately died of his wounds, but he was able to save the other 2. And because of this act of courage that he performed all day, for over 6 hours, putting his life on the line, saving people, he was awarded the only Victoria Cross of the 6th Division.
That's it, yeah. All right. Right now we're at a patch of farm buildings right in the DZA. This was the objective of B Company. And we just had a lady ask a lady who lives here if we are allowed to film here, and that's okay. So right here you see the old farm building, and it's all been patched up with where the bullet holes have been. So it's really special to be here. The farm has been partly rebuilt because it was so badly damaged during the attack. At the fence line of the edge of the farm, so where we're here right now, have lined up the platoon in some kind of attack order. Then with firing come from the farm, we are off running, firing wildly from the hip, covered by brand fire. So that basically declares why the facade is so full of bullet holes. These guys went this way like madmen. We overrun bunkers, toss grenades into the houses and barns, generally raise hell and take a few prisoners. The whole episode, in looking back, could not have taken 30 minutes in all. Seems too easy. I found the largest bunker outside the farm perimeter, set up a kind of headquarters, and put a guard over the prisoners who were scared to death. So the bunkers they are referring to weren't really bunkers because this wasn't a defensive line at first, so they were purely like dug in holes, like slit trenches or whatever. So that's what took place here.
We're right now at the local cemetery of Bergenvuurt. Obviously the church in the back is a newer church, but this was actually the area where the Canadian paratroopers were buried.
Okay.
You see the house over there?
Yeah.
It's a new house, but that was actually the temporary burial ground of those guys. So I figured I brought a flag.
Yes.
And let's place it there in the corner.
Sure.
Just in memory of those guys and what they did for us. Yep.
We were honored to lay a wreath on behalf of the Canadian Airborne Forces Association, also on behalf of all the sponsors of Bravery in Arms, Path to Total Victory, and a third one on behalf of all the 7 members of our team. Not only me, but with Luke and everybody.
Sounds good.
The mass drop was dangerous and the fighting intense, but the casualty rate of the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion out of 475 men was relatively low. 2 officers killed, 1 missing, and 1 wounded. 26 other ranks killed, 3 missing, and 34 wounded, totaling 67. The 6th Airborne Division casualty rate was 1,297 men killed, wounded, or missing. But one noted loss for the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion was Private Andy J.J. McNally, who was a hero of D-Day and had been wounded twice before, once in Normandy and the second time in the Ardennes. He had just returned to the battalion. Late afternoon on March 24th, reconnaissance units of the 15th Scottish Division made contact with the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion on the west side of their position. They were warmly welcomed. Despite the heavy losses of the 18th Airborne Corps, Operation Varsity was considered a great success. It prevented the German counterattacks on the advancing forces from the Rhine. It seized the key grounds and bridges, and they captured thousands of prisoners. It also set the stage for the future operations of the 1st Canadian Army for the full liberation of the Netherlands. During the next chapter, we will follow the 1st Canadian Corps' journey from Italy to rejoin the 1st Canadian Army in the Netherlands to participate in their last combat operations of the war, starting with Operation Cannonshot. On July 10, 1943, the British 8th Army and US 5th Army began Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. The 1st Canadian Infantry Division and the 5th Canadian Armored Brigade were embedded in the 8th Army and landed on the beach near Pachino. They advanced steadfastly through the mountains of central Sicily and earned the nickname Red Patch Devils from their enemy, reflecting the respect and fear they inspired. General Montgomery had so much trust in his Canadians that he chose them to lead the invasion of mainland Italy near Reggio Calabria on September 3, 1943. They continued to fight with distinction up the boot of Italy and later were joined by the 5th Canadian Armored Division, forming the 1st Canadian Corps. In May 1944, the Canadians broke the Hitler lines, and by August, the Gothic line. By the end of the year, they had reached Ravenna and the Po River Valley. In March 1945, after 21 months of ongoing combat operations, they rejoined the Canadian Army in Northwest Europe, leaving in the soil of Italy nearly 6,000 comrades who had paid the ultimate price. Operation Goldflake was a massive undertaking to move over 60,000 troops, tanks, artillery, guns, trucks, and all kinds of support equipment from Italy to Northwest Europe. It required a huge amount of planning and coordination. Embarkation began on February 22, 1945. Troops and materials were moved from ports at Naples and Livorno on their way to Marseille in France. The trip by ship to Marseille took 2 days, followed by a 5-day road move to Belgium. By March 17th, all soldiers of the 1st Canadian Corps were in Northwest Europe. As a result, the Red Patch Devils of the 1st Canadian Infantry Division and the Mighty Maroons of the 5th Canadian Armored Division, the D-Day Dodgers of Canada, were reunited with the 1st Canadian Army on their path to total victory.
So once the division arrived in northern Belgium, all the soldiers were billeted in houses in the local community until the beginning of April, between the 1st and the 3rd of April, when they came to this forest, the Reichswald Forest in Germany, which was their staging area in preparation for Operation Cannonshot. And you know what? I wish I had Jimmy and Charco with me right now, because they really are the local experts who could explain us, about about really what happened in this forest.
Oh, looking for us.
what are you guys doing here?
Doing some field research.
You're doing some field research?
Yeah.
Well, like, what a timing, man. Like, I can't
Nice to
believe
see
it.
you again.
So tell me, Jimmy, which regiments were in the forest here, actually?
Basically, the entire division, of course. But to avoid that these guys were all in the same place and with artillery and stuff like that, they placed them in different positions. So in this area, I know that the Royal 22nd Regiment was here. A little bit further down the forest was the Seaford Highlanders. A little bit back there was the West Nova Scotia Regiment. So they were all in this area preparing for the invasion and the liberation of the northern part of the Netherlands.
We understand that 2 Brigade was the leading element, that were the first one to cross the river.
Yep.
Right, on the invasion.
Yeah, right.
So, Charco, did they, 2 Brigade, like the PCLI, the Seaford Highlanders, what vehicle did they use, and do you know which regiment was using this? Did they train with to prepare for that?
It was the buffaloes they used
Right.
from the 4 Royal Tank Regiment.
Okay.
They trained here because they had to do the exercise for the crossing of the Ijssel near Wilp. Yeah, so we want to take you there so you can see where it happened,
Okay.
how it happened. Maybe even have a surprise for you in crossing the Ijssel,
All right. That's cool.
and follow their steps from there.
Man, I can't wait to find out. Well, let's go.
Yeah, let's go, man. All right.
Years ago to this day in April 1945, the 1st Canadian Infantry Division was crossing the Ijssel River aboard Buffaloes. Today we are aboard a Duck W, which is in perfect condition and still working. And the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry and the Seaford Highlanders, who were members of the 2nd Brigade, were the first one to cross the river and establish the bridgehead for the rest of the division to be able to cross. This is wonderful because we're doing this exactly 80 years to the day, crossing that same river at basically the same area. So it could be a better place to tell you the story of the path to total victory. now we're inside a Buffalo, and the Buffalo is an armored, basically amphibious vehicle. Huge, you can fit like a platoon here of infantry. And the advantage with like between the WW versus the Buffalo, one was armored, and the other one is that there's a ramp. So the soldiers, instead of jumping on top, over top to get off the vehicle in enemy fire, they could dismount from the rear and be protected by this armor of like this big chunk of steel. And on top of that, the Buffalo had 2 machine guns. As they were crossing, they would have a fire support of the artillery cover as they're crossing the river. So it offered good protection for the infantry regiments who crossed the Ijssel River in 1945. All right, so this morning we crossed the Ijssel River in the WW, and that was a 2nd Brigade, like I mentioned, and that was like Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. The Seaforth Highlanders were the leading battalion that crossed the river, and that opened the bridgehead to about 3,000 meters. And here we are in a park that's being set up to commemorate the soldiers of the 2nd Brigade who lost their lives after they crossed the Ijssel River to establish the bridgehead. They crossed the river on April 11th. Today is April 12th, 80 years ago. And the names we see on this sign, we shall never forget that. So earlier we crossed the Ijssel River and we followed the advance of the 2nd Brigade that established the bridgehead and captured Wilp. When the PPCLI finally secured Wilp, then the 1st Brigade crossed the Ijssel River and were ordered to switch the advance north instead of toward Apeldoorn. They were going toward the railroad that's behind me that links Deventer to Apeldoorn. Hi Jimmy, why don't we mention the story of when Lieutenant Colonel Mackenzie was killed? Because you know when the 48 Highlanders were switching their advance north,
Yeah.
he lost contact, radio contact with communications
Yeah.
with his forward companies that were supported with 1st Hussars tanks.
Yeah.
And he decided to move forward to find out where his companies were.
Yeah.
And there was something that happened that was very unfortunate, I think.
Maybe what's also good to mention is that Don Mackenzie was on the evening before the assault on Steenenkamer and the Hoven. He was very nervous. He couldn't get any sleep. He was worrying about his men because he knew the end of the war was coming. And of course, there were men in his regiment which were still guys from Italy, which were there from maybe Sicily on and then all the way through Italy. And he was worried that he was losing his men on the last days of the battle. And then the next day, indeed, the advance on Steenenkamer and the Hoven was going on. So at the end, Mackenzie was a little bit fed up by the fact that the brigadier was constantly asking for a sitrep, that he gave the telephone to Pickering and said, "Hey, you handle it off and tell him whatever he likes to hear, but I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my TAC HQ further towards the front line." And then he went all the way to Steenenkamer. The Wilp Steenenkamer road, he ran into the tanks of the 1st Hussars, and he also ran into Lieutenant Ledbetter from the 48.
Yes.
And there they came under heavy shelling, and at that point one of the shells dropped near Don Mackenzie and Lieutenant Pickering, wounding Lieutenant Pickering at the arm. And Don Mackenzie was lying on the ground, and he was just having just one sentence, and then he died of internal wounds. And here in Twello, maybe interesting is that the building over there, the old train station, that used to be a tech HQ of the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment.
Once they were in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm with Charco, and we're in an area that is called the Battle of the Five Woods by Lieutenant Colonel Turcotte, who was the commanding officer of the Royal 22e Regiment. They're the battalion who were tasked to clear this wooded area, and it's 5 different woods. That's why he called it the Five Woods. And right now we're standing at the corner, kind of the
German corner,
the southwest corner, which is the German area of green. This one was Christian green, and the Vendus were advancing from the east and to clear the wood in this direction. And I want to mention that a lot of the information that we're getting, that we're using, is because of research that were done by Joanne Dagenet, a book about her father, Gérard Dagenet, and also Philippe Mayotte, who is from Winnipeg, and who wrote a book about his father, Paul Mayotte. And the 2 individuals, Gérard and Paul, were in the same section. And they fought through this area. And they were members of A Company. So we're very fortunate that these 2 wonderful individuals did the research and provide us with all the maps that we can use today. All right, Charco, so we're arriving right now. We're at the northwest corner of Green, Greenwood. And can you orient us with what would be in front of us, like where the other woods would be from here?
Right in front of us. You
200
look at the
meters?
distance, more or less 200-300 meters. That's sector white.
Okay,
You have sector blue on our left side.
okay,
Sector red would be in the distance over there.
behind that, further out.
And sector yellow is way over there behind this part of the woods.
Okay, let's go try to locate actually this edge of blue where A Company, like the Private Bissonnette, earned his military medal and engaged.
We'll go to the road where their starting line was for the attack south. And that's also the spot where it must have happened.
Wow,
So
let's go check this out. Yes.
So Roger, the farm in the back, that's where the German tank was behind. And Bissonnette was here on the right side somewhere, and he shot the German tank with 3 rounds from here.
You're right, Charco. And at this point, the Vendus were on their own because the Hussars who were supporting them with their tanks were bogged down, and they were like too far away to give them any kind of support. And Private Bissonnette took his Piat and courageously, like he crawled as close as he could to the German tank to be able to engage it. So after he was in position close enough to fire, he shot 3 bombs at the tank and destroyed it. And that killed 2 of the crews, and he came back with 3 prisoners. Now that the tank was destroyed, the platoon was able to overrun the German position.
Bissonnette won the military medal for that.
That's incredible.
Incredible.
Must have been quite a challenge to do that, on challenging the tank. So from this point, it actually goes quite quick, mopping up this terrain. So
Finally.
we're actually looking at the end of the battle. So after this woods were cleared, just like a few hundred meters from here, Apeldoorn starts. But the Vandu's don't enter Apeldoorn from this side because their job was to clear these woods, and then they move southward towards the Apeldoorn Canal.
Okay. Yes.
And that's where they were ordered to find a way, find a spot to cross the Apeldoorn Canal. But there you see that the bridge they had to take was blown up, so they couldn't cross there anymore, and they had to find a different way to move west. Exactly.
All right. It's interesting because I believe from that time, there's somebody very special in your life that enters.
It becomes personal from that point.
Yes, it does. Why is that?
Well, my grandfather. My grandfather was a soldier in 1940.
Okay.
And after that, during the war, he joined the police force.
Okay.
So he was trained military and experienced law officer. But he had to went into hiding because he was forced to go to Germany for the Arbeitseinsatz, which was the forced labor. So they escaped the train where he was on, and he went into hiding in Apeldoorn area. He was originally from Deventer.
Okay.
So he was in this area, and when the Vandu's showed up here, he somehow managed to cross the German lines and join the Canadians, join the Vandu's.
Yeah.
He spoke his languages, so he spoke perfectly English, German, of course Dutch. Strangely enough, no French. I don't know, because it's strange with a French French Canadian regiment, but I mean, he managed. And from that point, from the 15th, he joined them. There's two documents.
Okay.
One say April 15th, the other says April 18th.
Okay.
But from what we know, that he was hiding in this area, he must have, joined. I'm assuming that it was the 15th.
Okay.
Because the documents also say about he fought with the Canadians, how he helped the wounded, and again as interpreter for the Vandu's.
So on the advance to Barneveld, he would have been attached with the Vandu's.
Exactly.
Working with them.
Barneveld, 4000.
Yeah. So it's very interesting to find out about that because once Apeldoorn was secured and we had to carry out the advance, there was a race.
Yeah.
There was a race. The brigade had to go to Barneveld as quickly as possible to link up with the 5th Division, so the 5th Division could carry on their advance north.
Good eyes on here.
And anyway, the Vandu's won the race to Barneveld.
Yeah.
So your father would have been had this first trophy with the Vandu's.
I'm pretty sure that he was happy to be the first in. He was competitive, so yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Definitely love that part.
Cool. I'm really honored. Do you have any pictures of your grandfather?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we see it?
You can see it, but it's in the car, so.
Oh, it's in the car. Okay.
Stay here.
Cap badge. You can use that as your keychain.
Oh, really cool.
Oh shit! No way.
No cap badge, but this is probably better.
Better because you can use it.
Thanks, Mr. Vandu.
All right.
Hey, Charcoal, can I see
And
Sick.
awesome. There. Charcoal. The Richmond said you had it.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Operation Cannonshot lasted from April 11th to the 17th. It started with the crossing of the Ijssel River and the capture of Wilp, and finished on the 17th when Apeldoorn was liberated after a bitter urban fight that costed heavy casualties, especially for the battalions of the 1st Brigade. Our team was very fortunate to be in Apeldoorn on April 17th and witness the commemorative activities that are held in the city every year. We even had the chance to visit the infamous bunker of the Nazi governor of occupied Netherlands, Ijssel, the only day of the year that it is open to the public. And later, in the evening, we witnessed the lighting of the liberation flame that burns in the central part of the city from April 17th to May 5th. These are memories we will cherish forever. But those celebrations didn't happen without a heavy cost. Indeed, during Operation Cannonshot, the 1st Canadian Infantry Division suffered 506 casualties, and the Saskatoon Light Infantry Mortar and Machine Gun platoons lost 14 men supporting the division. In the next chapter, we will discover the actions of the 5th Canadian Armored Division during Operation Cleanser, revisit the strange Battle of Otterlo, meet wonderful people, young and old, and rediscover the historic Hotel de Wereld, where General Fuchs accepted the unconditional surrender of the German army in the Netherlands. Operation Market Garden was a major combined airborne and ground offensive to capture 9 bridges in the area of the Lower Rhine from September 17th to the 25th, 1944. Once the airborne and lighter troops were inserted behind enemy lines, the armored columns of 30 Corps started their advance north to relieve the airborne troops protecting the vital crossing points, anticipating to reach Arnhem within 48 to 72 hours. Despite early gains, liberating Dutch cities like Eindhoven and Nijmegen, and capturing V2 rocket sites, German resistance stiffened considerably, delaying and ultimately halting the armored advance before they could reach Arnhem. As a result, the British and Polish paratroopers at Arnhem found themselves isolated and confronting a well-equipped enemy with superior armor, as they fought a murderous defensive battle for 9 days, until ammunition supplies were exhausted. Out of a combined force of 11,500 men, the British and Polish paratroopers suffered devastating losses: 1,465 men killed and over 6,500 taken prisoner. The Germans' attempt to retake the Nijmegen salient failed, but Arnhem was finally liberated by Canadians and British troops in April 1945. On the morning of April 12th, Operation Ganger was launched when General Fuchs ordered the 49th Division West Riding to cross the Lower Rhine and attack Arnhem. The tanks of the Ontario Regiment were tasked to support the British 146th Infantry Brigade and cross the river east of Arnhem. All day, the artillery and ground attack aircraft of the Royal Air Force were occupied bombarding and strafing the Germans' positions in Arnhem, and the offensive was preceded by one of the heaviest artillery barrage ever fired by the 1st Canadian Corps. On April 13th, the combined infantry and armored force succeeded in breaking the tough German resistance, and the next 2 days were spent clearing the areas south of Arnhem, with the city being completely liberated on April 15th. The German defenses east of Arnhem being defeated, on April 14th, the 5th Canadian Armored Division under the command of Major General Hofmeister started their fast advance north toward the Ijssel. It was the start of Operation Cleanser. Operation Cleanser began on 15 April 1945
as Arnhem was being liberated and the 1st Canadian Infantry Division was at the door of Apeldoorn. Two main objectives: advance toward the Ijssel, destroying German positions, and cut off retreating German forces from Apeldoorn to stop them from joining friendly lines beyond the Grebbe Line or across the Ijssel. Speed, coordination, and determination were key to success. In 4 days, Brigadier Combelant's 5th Brigade sealed the escape route, civilian casualties were minimal, and Canadian losses were light due to a fast advance and close Dutch underground cooperation. With its task in Western Netherlands complete, the 5th Division handed over to the 1st Infantry Division on 19 April.
We are at Otterlo. This is the village that was kind of liberated by the Irish Regiment of Canada. And today is April 15th, and we're almost to the day of what happened here 80 years ago.
After 8 Hussars rapidly cleared Otterlo, before continuing its advance north, the Irish Regiment of Canada completed the capture of Otterlo with the support of the tanks of the Governor-General's Horse Guards. The 5th Brigade Regiment was continuing its advance toward Barneveld, and General Hofmeisters decided to set up his divisional headquarters near Otterlo, while the Irish Regiment of Canada and the Governor-General's Horse Guards set up their headquarters in the church and the building next to it. The plan was to attack Horse Camp 3 kilometers north the next morning. The 17th Field Regiment Royal Canadian Artillery was positioned south and around Otterlo, but they were stretched so thin that they had no flank protection. The commanding officer of 17th Field Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel G.A. Rankin, directed that the guns not be dug as usual for ease of maneuver, should they quickly have to rotate them if attacked on the flanks. That was a smart move. Meanwhile, the German troops of the 361 Volksgrenadier Division were moving south from Apeldoorn after being pushed out from the 1st Canadian Infantry Division. They were the equivalent of 4 understrength battalions. Little did they knew that Otterlo was already occupied by the Canadians, so it is estimated that at least 600 German soldiers reached Otterlo on the evening of 16 April. The first fight broke out when the platoon size of German aggressively attacked the village center and Irish Regiment headquarters across from the church, madly firing their automatic weapons. All through the night and early morning hours of April 17th, the gunners on the south side of the village fought like lions, trying to repulse many attacks. Ended up being overrun by the fast and furious attack of the Germans. Deprived of any infantry or armored support, they had to fight off the enemy in close quarter battle, firing their personal weapons, guns and mortars at short range and even hand-to-hand combat. It was complete chaos, to the point that a group of German soldiers managed to dug in and consolidate their position.
Says that about 200 of them took a different route, but at least 600 Germans stormed this position.
They did 3 attempts to get to town. First one was straight ahead, and then they outflanked them on both sides.
Right.
The story goes that the Germans were led by an SS officer who went like a madman with these guys screaming through town, firing at everything they got, and at midnight, so it was complete chaos. The fighting was so hard that they had to do hand-to-hand fighting. So and then all of a sudden, from that road in the background, 6 Churchill tanks from the Royal Engineers came up. There were some AVREs with it as well, those tanks with these large barrels where they can blow like holes in fortified positions.
Yes.
They fired like madmen with their guns towards the enemy to drive the enemy away.
I heard a funny story about the church steeple that happened during the night of 1617.
Yeah, well, basically it was that the 4th Field Regiment, anti-tank regiment, I had to say, from the RCA, were across the street from regimental HQ, and they were asking the guys from the medium regiment just outside of town to please stop firing small arms fire and their grenades, because they were firing over their heads, so it was a danger for the guys from the anti-tank regiment. Well, then eventually they fired a shot in the dark, and they shot off the spire of the church tower.
At daybreak, by now there was enough light to identify who was who in the midst of confusion, and the tank crews of the Governor-General Horse Guards were able to join in the fight. Coordinating their firepower with the Royal Engineers Averies and the flamethrower carriers, they assisted the infantry in clearing the remaining pockets of German resistance dug in along the road on the northeast side of the town. By mid-morning, the battle was over. The Canadians present at the Battle of Otterlo remember it as the strangest battle they fought during the war. For 6.5 hours, artillerymen had engaged desperate German infantry at point-blank range in hand-to-hand combat with no support from armor or infantry. Canadian and British losses were light considering the confusion of the surprise attack. 17 Canadians and 6 British soldiers lost their lives and 48 were wounded. The Battle of Otterlo was a demonstration of Canadian courage and grit. In the face of being overrun, they never faltered and stood their ground like the true warriors that they were.
My grandfather always wanted to come back to the Netherlands and never made his way. So I brought him today, and that's why I'm here. It's my grandfather, Jacques-Émile Bélanger. He was a artillery with the 1st Canadian Division. He was 1st Field Regiment. And I think the more I research, the more I can't believe the living conditions. We read books about who fought what part of the war, what city they were in, what the weather was like, but they don't tell you the real sacrifice that the men did. And until you saw the actual reenactment, and when I read about a smoke bomb, for example, the purpose of it, and it's to help others cross over, I got very emotional. It was a very emotional time for me, and I am even more touched that the Dutch, the amount of Canadian flags that are here in the Netherlands, the amount of celebration they do, always remembering us, and we don't teach about us in school. I could almost, and I'm getting goosebumps, I could almost feel his footsteps. The pride they must have felt to just come here and see the celebration rather than, you know, just the difficult things. But there was a scene that really touched me, and that was when somebody went down in the reenactment and was crying out for his mother, and I've been told very often they did cry for their mothers. And the person who's fighting at the gun has no ability to go help his comrade. And imagine going to sleep knowing that you couldn't help your buddy because you had to protect everybody else. We need to teach more about the real hardships, because the world is not a happy place right now. And I'd like for more people to reflect on what they actually gave up for us and our freedom.
The Grebbe Line is a critical part of the Netherlands' military history. This historic defensive line, built in 1745, stretched from the Rhine near Rennen to the Zuiderzee near Speckenberg. During the 1930s, the Dutch government, realizing the possibility of a German invasion, repaired and modernized it. On the 11th of May 1940, the Dutch army deployed along the Grebbe Line was caught off guard by the fast German offensive at a feature called Grebbeberg, at the foot of a small hill on the southern portion of the line. The firepower of the German forces was just too much for the under-equipped and ill-trained Dutch army. Eventually, the line was abandoned and the Dutch troops were forced to withdraw. The Germans arrived at Utrecht and threatened to bomb the city. Realizing that the situation was desperate and wanting to minimize civilian casualties, General Winkelman, the commander-in-chief of the Dutch army, decided to capitulate. Rotterdam had been heavily bombed in the days before, and he wanted to spare the citizens of Utrecht. After 3 days of fierce battle at the Grebbeberg, 420 Dutch soldiers lost their lives, and between 250 to 300 German soldiers were killed. Let's meet Madame Omakas, whose family lived near the Grebbe Line during the war, when she was just a teenager.
I'm really honored to meet you today. For us, it's very special to have a chance to speak with someone who's an eyewitness.
Bij ons was het ook onder water gezet. De Nederlanders dachten dat ze met water konden winnen. Op een gegeven moment dat de militairen die kwamen koffie drinken s'avonds. En gingen ze om 9:30 weer weg, want ze moesten binnenkomen natuurlijk. Maar op een gegeven moment, dan s'avonds liepen we mee naar buiten, want we hadden ze een heel aantal spelletjes in doen. En wij zaten in het geschiedschrijf van de Liniedijk, hè. En donderdagavond was dat. En toen gingen die militairen naar huis. Dan stonden we buiten en toen zagen we ineens vuurpijlen. Die van achter de Liniedijk was verraden, hè. Dus morgens om 5:00 hoorden wij ineens heel vliegtuigen. En mijn zus deed het raam open en toen zei ze, daar heb je gedonder al. En toen deed ze op die stelling die daar schieten, hè. Het waren de foute Nederlanders, daar had je meer last van. Die kon je niet vertrouwen. Wij woonden naast een boer en die deed ondergronds werk. Wisten wij wel, radio. En er waren wel eens dat er een auto kwam en daar zaten die verkeerden in. Dat konden ze niks vinden. Maar op een gegeven moment, op een zaterdagmiddag. Op zaterdagmiddag, die auto die kwam. Maar die boeren die mochten wel. Die boer die had een gemeentebedrijf. En het was toen allemaal handwerk, hè. En dan hadden ze, het was tijd van dorsen. Dat het graan moest gedorst worden. En hier is een boer achter dat de Duitsers niet pakten, want de Duitsers die lagen overal beslag op. En de buurman had zelf 2 jongens. En een onderduiker en een knecht. Wij zagen die auto komen, want we zijn net naast ons, daarachter. En dus mijn vader zegt, allemaal naar binnen, want er gebeurt wat. Dan gingen ze naar een oprijlaan en dan gingen ze eruit. En de buurman die hield de deur dicht met zijn grote voet. En die deur die hield hij zo een stukje open en hield zijn klomp ervoor, dan kon de ander wegkomen. Ze schieten hem zo door zijn hoofd heen. Ja, en toen kwam zijn zoon, die hoorde wat. En die was er bezig dat stro aan het opruimen, die had nog die gavel. En die zei, God vader, wat gebeurt er? En ze schieten hem er ook zo neer. en een onderduiker. Allemaal mee, maar nooit meer teruggekomen. Om 4 uur waren de Canadezen. Wij kregen meneer sigaretten en chocola. En er waren 2 Nederlanders bij, die hadden zich aangesloten bij de Canadezen. Maar ineens waren de Canadezen weg, 's morgens. Want toen de oorlog was afgelopen en ze konden de eerste 3 maanden nog niet naar Canada terug. En hoe komt dat nu? Die opa, daar waren ze in huis. Want toen de oorlog was afgelopen en ze konden de eerste 3 maanden nog niet naar Canada terug. En toen zijn ze gekomen en toen kwamen Ed en dingen ook hier. En toen zei Betty, die had geen oorlog meegemaakt en die zei, wat moet ik? Toen zei ik, ga naar de bunker. En toen gaan ze naar de bunker en toen loopt Ed zo tegen de foto van zijn vader. En zo dat ze wachten, want toen kwam ik en ze.
Or you think it looks like your dad?
This guy right here. And writing on it, so Germany can put Italy tutto finito, here we come Canada. There's another picture, the same machine, but it says here we come Vancouver. So the Seaforth Islanders.
All right.
Were part of it. And
Yeah.
but this guy here, when we looked at this, it sure looked like him. And that's what he looked like when he was a kid. So I didn't believe it when I saw it because it was like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
So I took pictures of it and I sent it to my brother.
It's okay.
I sent it to my brother and my sisters, and I said, "Look what we found here and stuff." And yeah, I didn't say who it was, and he said, well, "Where'd you get a picture of the old man?" And so I wasn't the one that actually picked them out. Well, I saw them, but it was them that validated it more than anything. So anyway, that's the story. Important. So anyway, I am proud to be your friend. Thank you.
Not as proud as me. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Good.
Now what happened is there's actually says capitulation, but there was no capitulation that took place here because that happened on the 4th of May to Montgomery in an army tent in Germany. And on that morning in that army tent, it was agreed that occupied territory, so that was the Netherlands and Denmark, would be liberated starting from the 5th of May. And Charles Fox said, let's mark that moment. We'll have the Germans come to us and hand over power physically. So that's how they came to sit here. And this place, Wageningen, was chosen because the Germans were 5 kilometers down the road. In the Grebbe they were still laid down with all their weapons, and the Allied forces, and among them many Canadians, were coming up from Arnhem and Apeldoorn. So this was really shooting area. So there was nobody here. Wageningen was evacuated. So it was like a ghost town, but also nice to be controlled. So there was no hidden surprises. So they sat here, and in the morning they discussed food transport, because of course the northern part of the Netherlands was deprived of food for quite a long time. And also something funny happened because Charles Fox was here, and when the Germans showed up, it wasn't the upper commander, Blaskowitz, who showed up, but he sent his assistant, Reichelt. It had to do with stars and stripes. That wasn't Charles Fox had less stars and stripes than Blaskowitz. But Charles Fox was not amused. So he said, okay, let's sit down to discuss the necessary things and then return to Hilversum and go and get your boss. And yes, in the afternoon, Blaskowitz arrived here for the official talks. In the meantime, also there were lots of journalists which arrived. There were about 30 war journalists, and that's also why we have so many images pictures, but also film and also audio. So they sat down here, and at a certain point the journalists had to leave because they wanted to discuss some I don't want to say secret, but some things that not everybody had to know. So they sat here for quite some time and exchanged lots of information as well. And at the end of the day, something funny happened because the orders to surrender at the end of the day couldn't be signed. They had to do so many alterations. So what was agreed on is that on the 6th of May, Blaskowicz would come back to sign the document, and during the night of the 5th, they processed all the changes that had to be done to the unconditional orders to surrender. And that signature was put in the aula just next door, where now there's a movie theater. So it's a sort of a connection. Here were the talks, and there the signature. But for us Dutch, it's all about Hotel de Wereld, because this is where the discussions took place. Under the document it says the 5th of May, Hotel de Wereld. So for us Dutch, we always celebrate on the 5th of May from Hotel de Wereld the liberation.
What's the most important thing you want to teach children about freedom and changing the world?
That's a big question. The most important thing, I think, is listen to your grandparents and your parents and your teachers. The people who because yesterday I was with a 99-year-old eyewitness of the war, Mrs. Omakas. She told us about the story of World War II.
Ze hebben niks meer voor elkaar over. Wij deelden alles.
She says,
Er was niks, maar je hielp elkaar.
she said, we
Daar had ik nog met iemand over. Ik zeg, eigenlijk, de oorlog was nog niet eens zo gek.
and she
We hebben er best een hoop van geleerd.
she
Daar
learned a
was
lot
je ook
about.
met weinig tevreden. Het moet nu steeds meer en meer.
And it's important to take care of each other.
Well, it's
Yeah.
now.
Everybody is here now. The school is as guardians of the memory. And I wish you put it in a place that every children can see it at the school.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ronderen je de arms. Ik zal hem in de school zetten dat jullie hem goed kunnen zien. Ik zet hem op.
See? Sometimes you gotta film the camera guy too, eh?
Oh, there you go.
How are you doing?
Good.
You like your morning?
Oh yeah. That's pretty exceptional. It almost seems like trying to like describe the preservation of all these things, you know?
Yeah.
Like it seems like when the war ended, they could have just totaled everything
Mm-hmm.
and then wanted to forget it and move on. But it's not the case. Like everything is completely restored, completely well taken care of. You know, like you sat in chairs that were there that were sat in 80 years ago. Yeah, 80 years ago. I mean, they were made 85 years ago. They're old.
That's how we
People
preserve
are-
history, eh?
And people are so respectful of it too. You know, like I don't see anyone going in and damaging it, and
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's great.
Yeah.
In this short documentary, we have walked in the footsteps of the 1st Canadian Infantry Division and the 5th Canadian Armored Division, who freshly arrived from Italy, were reunited with the 1st Canadian Army for the liberation of the Netherlands. As Canadians, we should never forget the sacrifice of our young soldiers, some of whom paid the ultimate price, and others who came home injured physically and mentally forever. It is our solemn duty and our responsibility to learn our history and teach it to our children and future generations in the hope that tragedies of this magnitude never happen again.
We were deeply touched by the strong spirit of remembrance of the Dutch people. They have not forgotten, and they remain thankful to Canada for their freedom. As we approach the ceremonies that will be held from coast to coast during Remembrance Week, let us ponder on the importance of being united as a nation to honor the men and women who died serving Canada in many conflicts around the world, protecting democracy and freedom wherever they served and are still serving today. I hope you enjoyed this documentary. It is the fruit of countless hours of volunteer work from many guardians of the memory across Canada and in the Netherlands. Thank you for watching, subscribing, and sharing this documentary with everyone you know, so we can all be guardians of the memory. For Bravery in Arms, Path to Total Victory, this is Roger Chabot. Till we meet again, Custos Memoriam.
In a small town where the rivers flow, William was 18, just a boy, you know. He was answering the call with hope in his heart for the land of the maple leaf he'd soon depart. Trained as a paratrooper, eyes shining bright, the thrill of the sky, the promise of flight. But the dreams of glory soon turned to fright as he stood at the door on that terrible night. Oh, William, did you hear the angels cry underneath the fire as the brave ones died? Battlefields echo with the cries of the lost. The boy left home, what a heavy cost. Fear became a friend on that fateful shore in a world of chaos, longing for home evermore. Jumped from the plane, lost in the haze. The landing was madness in the clash and the blaze. Fellow soldiers falling, whispers of pain. In that cruel chaos, nothing felt the same. 2 long years he wandered through war. In fields of Europe, the word valor was born. His letter unanswered, many moments alone. What's it mean to fight when love feels like stone? Oh, William, did you hear the angels cry underneath the fire as the brave ones died? Battlefields echo with the cries of the lost. The boy left home, what a heavy cost. Fear became a friend on that fateful shore in a world of chaos, longing for home evermore. In the heat and misery, he finally fell. A wound to carry, a story to tell. When he made it back home, the boy was a man, but the light in his eyes, like the summer was planned. He walked through fields, the corn standing tall. With ghosts in his heart, he felt so small. The laughter of children just seemed to remind of a life that was lost, a piece left behind. Oh, William, did you hear the angels cry underneath the fire as the brave ones